So I am really pleased to have my alumnus of the MA Creative Writing and Education, Yundie, here today to talk to me about a topic that's very dear to both our hearts for lots of different reasons, which you'll discover as we get the conversation going. And what we're going to look at today is really drawing on Yundie's experience of Chinese parents and looking at the issue about what they need and want from their children's teachers and what should they expect from their children. Maybe, Yundie, I'll just hand over to you a bit. Maybe you could just introduce yourself, explain who you are, and, explain how you've come to learn a lot about this subject, haven't you, really, over the years?
Okay. Hi, Francis. Thanks for having me. I feel very honored to be here sharing my experience and idea about the stories I learned about on Chinese families and parents. So now I teach online to some Chinese students, one-to-one, helping them with their academic performance in order to get into some bilingual or international schools in Shanghai. Because it's one-to-one course, so I've got the chance to learn more deeply about the story about the child, like why they are changing their school and why they put so much effort on English study. So when I saw the post and watched the video between Francis and your son Theo
Yeah,
about his educational experience, I was very inspired. So I translated it into Chinese, and
yeah, thank you for that.
surprisingly,
Yeah.
it's reached a very good clicks and reviews. And yes, so I also ask some of the parents if they've got some particular concerns about parenting. That's why I'm here today.
Yeah. So maybe give me a sense about, should we just sort of paint a sort of, in quotes, fictional picture of perhaps, and we want to avoid stereotypes here, don't we? We want to be really careful. So, but as best you can, draw us a picture of like what a typical sort of parent that you've encountered might be wanting and needing from their children's teachers. Just give us a sense of a parent, um, and what they want.
I think for the parents, the ideal teacher, from my perspective,
Yeah,
they want a teacher to be multifunctional,
yeah,
not only about the school at the school, and you have to also teach students about their behavior or some cultural things as well. But
yeah,
for the teachers at the school, from my understanding and knowledge, a lot of Chinese teachers at the school, especially the public school ones, they are in charge of everything,
yeah,
including administration. And I know some teachers in middle school, they are the head teachers for
mm,
several classes, which
yeah,
means they cannot spare their energy or time to look after each students as individuals. And
yeah.
I think Francis also mentioned this, Theo also mentioned this in his story, which I found very inspiring as well.
Yeah, and should we say that, from you talking to me, that a lot of the parents that you've encountered, uh, have quite a rigid idea of how a teacher should behave. That it's all about learning facts and getting their children ready for exams. Is that? I mean, tell me a bit about that.
This is just one type.
Mm,
Some teachers in China, they are like the authority.
yeah.
Parents just listen to them like on everything,
Mm,
and they would do some extra work at home, especially on children's school work. But
mm,
for other types of teachers, and the parents are the authority because they feel that I pay very expensive tuition fee. So you
Yeah.
have to follow our routine, our way
Uh,
teaching. So that's quite different. It really depends on what kinds of schools.
yeah, that's really interesting. So you get some parents who are very defer to the teachers and absolutely accept that, and then you've got the other type of parents who actually are really demanding of teachers. Maybe tell me a bit about those types of parents. What do they want demand from their teachers?
I think the priority is the mark, is the score.
Mm,
And for example, if the student doesn't do well at the final, and they would ask the
yeah,
for the teachers, but not the children, and they would
yeah,
require the school to change teachers. So I think,
really,
yeah,
yeah.
in this case, the role of a teacher can be
Wow.
very, how to say, I don't know, they cannot do things from
Mm.
the tension of being a real teacher.
So some parents sort of essentially kind of try to get rid of teachers they feel are not getting the right exam results out of the people, out of their children. Yeah,
Yeah, that happened to me, to be honest, because
yeah,
if they parents pay me and
yeah,
they don't see any improvement or obvious
yeah.
improvement on the children's academic performance, and they will say, okay, maybe we need to change a teacher. But
Mm,
the situation is not just about teaching; it's also about the ways children learn about knowledge, a lot of
mm.
factors.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about this a bit. I'm interested in this area. So it might be, for example, and again, we're sort of aiming this podcast, maybe we'll be able to translate it, for your audience as well. So let's take an example. Like you, for example, might form a good relationship with one of your one-to-one tuitions and you actually get on with the child. But if the child then maybe takes a bit of a step backwards, doesn't do so well in their exams, then, you know, you essentially could be just sacked by the teacher, couldn't you?
Yeah,
Um, by the parents, sorry.
the parents.
That,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think like maybe we should say something to parents here because I think this is really important. You and I are both very experienced teachers, but children don't learn in kind of progressive lines, so they don't. So I think a lot of parents have this idea that you start with little knowledge as a pupil and then you go up and up and up and up and up, and actually the way children learn is often up and down and up and down,
Mm,
like we all do. It's learning is not something that can be sort of measured really easily, and I would say my advice to parents here is if your child is forming a good relationship with a teacher such as yourself, it might be actually they do take a bit of a step backwards because they begin to relax a bit and they're not obsessed with exams and they actually need that space to grow as people. And they need that sort of freedom to explore, and that might be they don't get the best exam results, but actually you as a parent, you need to trust your instinct. If your child is saying, oh, I really get on with this teacher, I'm really learning a lot from them, but they're not necessarily doing so well in the exams, trust the child, trust the teacher, because in the end it will have the effect. And you got to think long term. And then back to Theo here, you know he at times didn't do so well in exams, sometimes he did amazingly well, but overall he was motivated and he was, and now, you look long picture, he's 25, got on the fast track for civil service, he's done extremely well, but that's because he hasn't been like obsessively pushed. He's, actually had chance to reflect and do things for himself, so he will read really long books now. He's reading these
mm,
Charles Dickens of his own accord, not because he was forced to do it as a child, because he wasn't,
mm.
you know So I'm just, I think maybe you could talk a bit about that. What's your perspective on this? Just
I believe your words just comfort me a lot because every time the parents mentioned they would like to change the teacher, and I
yeah,
would say it's very normal that, as you said, the children might meet ups and downs on their study. But I feel so sorry for the parents as well, because the reason why they get the anxiety
yeah,
is the peer pressure of their children, because they
yeah,
compare with other families, with other uh,
mm,
kids. So that's why. So this is a very difficult or complicated situation. No matter what I say or persuade them,
yeah.
they just make the decision to change the teacher.
Yeah, I mean, and again, let's go back because maybe we can use this video with your parents, or if we can translate it, it'd be even better. But I think back to times when my son did lots of exams and stuff and didn't do as well as other people, and then everything's on Facebook, isn't it? And there are people, I don't know if it happens with the Chinese parents, and you're like comparing your child with all of these people who've done so well, and it's all, I would say to parents, don't worry about that. I know it's hard. I had one parent say to me, you know, sort of told me off because I'd sent my child to a state school, so that's state funded school. It wasn't private.
Mm.
And, I do know of quite a few parents who sent their children to private schools. So, I'm aware of that. And, this parent said to me, "Oh, aren't you really, uh, don't you feel really guilty because you sent your child to a state school and then didn't do it?" I mean, Theo did well in his A levels, which is what 18-year-olds take in this
Mhm.
country, but he didn't do as well as some of his peers. And aren't you guilty because he didn't do so well? And I thought that did make me feel bad for a bit. But I also checked in with Theo, and he said, "Well, I really enjoyed my education, and you know, I'm not amazing at exams. I did the best I could, So I think that's important to say. I mean, I'm just wondering if that sort of thing happens you know, with Chinese parents.
I think it happens similarly in China as well, because they feel they've got the responsibility to give the best thing
Yeah,
to their. But what's the definition of best? Maybe for some families, their children are very suitable for like bilingual or private school, but for some, they are more fit in state or public schools.
yeah,
They just feel children, parents just feel okay. Everybody goes this way. Maybe my child goes that way. So while going through your notes, I found a note. It's let children lead. I believe
yeah,
this is something Chinese parents miss in their
yeah,
parents, because I feel that the children, they don't have their voice in the family.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. That's interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
most of my children, my students, they said, "Oh, my mother asked me, forced me to do this English session with you. I don't want to do that." So they are being
yeah,
very honest.
yeah, yeah. And do you find that they begin to change their opinion, enjoy it after a while, because you form a relationship with them and yeah,
I think so. For nearly 99% of my students,
yeah,
we've built up very good relationship, no matter in English study or personal connection. I quite
yeah,
enjoy.
and I think that again is really super valuable for children, isn't it? That you know, they're very lucky to have you as a teacher because you're very friendly and you listen to people, don't you? You have this ability to draw out what your learners want, which I think is a vital thing of a good teacher, isn't it? That they listen to what their pupils want and build on their own interests. Um, yeah, maybe we could talk a little bit about that, because I think that's something parents in the UK and across the world really need to understand. It's not about imposing what you think your child needs. It's about listening carefully to your child. What are they interested in? Building on those interests and drawing out those interests. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Actually, the way I teach is also something I learned from our MA program. Um,
Yeah.
because for creative writing, there is no rules or certain ways
Mm,
you have to follow. So, for example, for English teaching, I would just say, don't care about the grammar or vocabulary. This is about you talk about your feelings. And I
yeah.
know, I understand at school, you barely have such chances to do that. So I would not judge you. So I would make this very clear in our class. So I think most of children, they value this as well.
Yeah, tell me a bit about that. So you get them often maybe to do free writing or talk about what they're interested in. Tell me what happens then, over time when you're working with your pupils.
They feel very surprised or shocked because a teacher
Yeah,
said you can just write whatever you want, and they feel, okay, can I really write whatever, and without caring about the grammar. So I think teaching creative writing, our course also
yeah,
has taught me a lot the way to teach writing. And
yeah.
I think it provides enough freedom and space, a safe space for students to write down something they really care about.
Mm. And do you find they take a while to get into the mode of doing that, or some can just do it straight away, can they?
I would explain what is that at first, but I also, from my perspective, I also worry about the effect in a very practical way, because free writing is not something you can see the progress
Yeah,
very quickly.
yeah,
And uh, the teacher, the parents, they might concern about, okay, what's this for? So during my time on creative writing and education, creative writing and education, our program, I used to mention these. So under a very rote education, uh,
yeah.
this way possible, but I'm my trying this from my part.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's important for parents to understand that there is a lot of research and theory that shows if children are given a chance to write what they're interested in to free writers, it does massively improve their writing over time, and it improves anyone's writing over time. So parents should try it. Why does it do that? Well, it unlocks something called flow, which is where your internal critic or your internal editor, this person in your head that we all have, that's very critical of what we do, often stops people writing well. And so I've been free writing for decades now, and and the reason why I'm able to write a lot of books and do well with my writing is because I free write I free write every day, for 10 minutes every day. And I think that parents need to understand that. I think a lot of teachers need to understand that. You know, it's a very rich and important way for writing to happen, and is one major way people stop being blocked with their writing.
Hmm.
That's really important, isn't it? So um, should we so that's one way that parents could, improve their children's writing. If we were giving advice to parents, encourage them to do some free writing and actually encourage them perhaps to have a private space for their writing, so they feel they don't have to share it with their parents, but it can be really helpful.
Hmm.
And the other thing that's really important is dialogue, isn't it? To have a talking, having a kind of dialogic or conversation with your child about, what they're interested in, what they know about a topic, and what they want to know more about is really important. So maybe, do you want to talk a little bit about, the sorts of reasons why that's important? Because I think a lot of parents think, and this is again true in the UK, think that learning is often just about children sitting silently and making notes, being told things by their teacher. And that actually is not a very effective way of learning. It's much more effective to have a conversation, a bit like what we're having now, than just being told a lot of stuff. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I believe most of Chinese students, Chinese parents, they've got the sense to cultivate children's hobbies or interests.
Yeah,
Maybe initially they ask the children about, oh, what do you like to do? But I don't know why. I don't understand till now why this such good thing, positive thing, turn out to be something forcing, like
yeah,
something forced at the end.
yeah,
And
yeah,
for example, children might enjoy doing some drawing, and then
yeah,
maybe they have to take part in some competition, which they don't,
yeah.
and it has become something they are forced to do, and they no longer enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a really important thing, isn't it? To give kind of autonomy or control to children where you can, so they have a chance to, you know, choose what they want to do. Yeah. Um, yeah, go on.
I think it's very important for parents to make it clear, okay, we are doing this not for awards or like being the top
Yeah.
one, top three. So you just enjoy it. I think that's very important. Just now you mentioned the reading is not about generating or collecting words or vocabulary. It's just about you sitting there silently, having some space for
Mm,
yourself. But if I think for Chinese parents, if they can put down some burden,
mm.
some
Yeah, yeah,
practical goals, I think they can enjoy a better way of parenting as well. Because the children, the parents I meet, they are so anxious, and it
yeah.
seems sometimes they can pass their anxiety to me, and I become
Mm,
very anxious as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think like that's where the mindfulness can come in. It's really helpful, isn't it? That so mindfulness is really about becoming aware of your feelings and accepting them. So if you are anxious, you're aware of it, but you also do things to calm and soothe yourself. So one key thing in mindfulness is breathing techniques, isn't it? So doing the 7-11 breathing, which is where you breathe in for 7, count of 7, and breathe out for a count of 11, can immediately sort of calm people down. And because learning happens best when people are not very anxious. If they're very anxious, it's very difficult for the brain to take things in properly. So parents, I think, could really benefit from doing sort of mindful techniques. Is that something you've tried, or is it something you'd recommend?
I learned something about one of the parents, and she's got one boy and one girl. She said since the first day her daughter was born, she started to writing journal just
Yeah,
on parenting, and she said now she's got 6 or 7 books of that, and she found it's really helpful every time
yeah,
um, she has overcome some difficulties, and she would write it down. But also this is something I don't quite understand. The girl, her daughter is 8 or
mm,
9 year two, and one day she told me she sent her daughter to therapy
right,
because
yeah,
her daughter is very shy and
yeah,
afraid of challenging. So I feel,
yeah,
is this too early for a
yeah,
kid to do such
yeah,
therapy? And I
yeah.
know this parent, she cares about the children very much. What
Mm.
do you think, Francis?
Yeah, well, it depends what type of therapy. So there are sort of child therapies. So, you know, there are some really helpful therapies for children to help them play, for example. So, if they're not, if children haven't learnt to play, say, with dolls or teddy bears or whatever, that can be a real problem because they don't develop an imaginative world, and that imagination is central to learning actually. So there are lots of really helpful therapies for children. I would say possibly with an 8-year-old having a talking therapy probably wouldn't be very helpful like it would be for an adult, but there's certainly certain things that therapists can do for children that are very helpful. um, I guess it indicates that the parent does really care about their child, doesn't it? And but I'd also maybe suggest that the parent has some therapy too. Maybe there's child parent therapy. It might be that there's things going on there. But it's difficult to judge, isn't it, when you don't know the full case. What's your view? Do you think it's too young, or you have that view?
Because I before you shared this, I had no idea about the child therapy, but if
Yeah.
there, I think it's necessary or it's essential for some special cases because
Mm,
a year many teenagers in China they suffered from academic pressure and
mm,
decided to commit suicide. I don't know if
mm,
this happened in the UK, so I think um, the mental health of teenager and
mm.
children now this issue has drawn a lot of attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like there is uh, lot to be said, for children to have therapy. It also does depend on the type of therapy. So I would actually say parents need to be a little bit cautious around therapy that gets children talking a lot about trauma. I think that, I personally would be more in favor of children having a more of a coaching type approach, where clear strategies are taught to the children, such as learning to the 7-11 breathing, for example, which children can do, or doing some mindful strategies, such as, I don't know, this is a very good one for children, where if a child's feeling anxious, encourage them to just follow their finger around their other fingers like this. I've got it, and that can just calm people down. Or a strategy like in this country we have the nursery rhyme Bar Bar Black Sheep, um, which if you sing, or a nursery rhyme, if you sing, if you're feeling very anxious, and it's good for adults too, it just calms you down, gives you a moment. Because I think what happens when people get very anxious or angry is it bypasses their sort of cognitive functions in the front of their brain. They can't think clearly, and people need to be calm to be in a state of learning, and need to learn to respond. I would say that, that's where parenting is so central. If your child is getting very upset and angry, it's not appropriate to get angry back and shout at them, because they will just learn to be angry in that case. Or you need as to be calm as a parent, and listen, and give set boundaries, obviously, and set clear. But just getting angry back at your child, or even worse, I mean, hitting them for misbehavior doesn't work. You just land up getting children who are angry and violent. And so I think that's an issue across the world, isn't it? Parents, but 99% of parents really love their children, want the best for them, but often they don't quite know how to um, behave with them, because they possibly were shouted at when they got upset when they were the children, and so the cycle goes on. So I think it's really important for parents to learn to parent, you know, which I guess in a way this is what we're talking about um, in this podcast, aren't we? We're sort of exploring, you know, what children you can reasonably expect from children, and what, you know, can be really quite damaging for them. I don't know. What's your view on all of that? You have you got a view?
I just feel there is a lot to learn about parenting, and I every time the parents shared with me, they are very angry about the children's study and the behavior, and I can imagine the expression on their faces. And I
Mm,
also got a question from one of the parents, that she would like to know how to overcome or deal with the disappointments or
mm,
depression from parenting. For
mm,
example, they've set a certain goal for the children, but the
mm,
children never follow the path the way parents
mm.
arrange. So
Yeah.
how can they deal with
Mm,
the their demands with the reality, the facts?
yeah. Well, there's lots to say there, isn't there? I mean, it might be that, you know, often people who are being very disappointed in their children are actually very disappointed in themselves. And, you know, so learning, parents learning to be kinder to themselves. You know, I would say to parents, it's okay if your child fails. It's okay. You know, be kind to yourself as a parent. Don't beat yourself up. It's not your fault. You know, children are good and bad at different things, and
Mm,
you know, being patient with yourself and with your child is really important. um, I would say, you know, one thing that we know has a really positive effect is writing a sort of little gratitude diary. So, you know, it might be that your child has kind of not done well in an exam or something like that, but maybe write a list of things you're really grateful for your child, you know, about your child. You know, you're really grateful, say they're healthy,
mm,
or, you know, you're really grateful that they like this or that, or you're really grateful, you know, that you have a nice time with them. And so, you know, writing a gratitude diary, we do know the research shows that that has a very good effect on parents and people generally.
mm,
So I would suggest maybe, you know, taking a step back. If you're very upset as a parent and you're, you know, very emotional, you can't think straight,
mm,
because it bypasses the kind of rational part of your brain. So you need to be able to be calm, and you
mm,
need to be able to do some mindfulness, go for a walk, whatever it is that calms you down, and think clearly about what has happened. And you know, be patient, set goals that are reasonable goals, perhaps help the child, you know, set their own goals,
mm,
um, and so they internalize what they want to do, and talk to them about what would they like to, where would they like to be, you know, in a year's time, what would they like to learn, and how they might go about doing it. So you're sort of listening to your child, and you're encouraging your child to figure out for themselves what would be the best way to go forward with this, you know, this situation.
mm,
um, but certainly, you know, I know of quite a few parents, I'm sure you do, who just get very upset if their child has failed an exam, and maybe are not very nice to their child. That doesn't work. It won't make your child better at exams. In fact, it will probably make them worse. So, you know, you need to really think calmly, talk to your, you know, if you have a partner, husband, wife, talk to them about it, and set out a plan of action for it. Because, you know, children need support and help and care and love, and if they don't get that, then, you know, bigger problems can happen.
yeah.
That's what I would say. What's your view on that? What are
I
you?
I totally agree with that, and I think that's a very good idea for about the gratitude
Yeah. Diary. Yeah.
diary. Yeah, I think for parents, being kind to yourself is also being kind to others. Not
Yeah.
all the same, and I think sometimes parents ignore how important it is to observe yourself. Maybe you want
Mm.
something from your children, that
Yeah.
thing, something you want for yourself. It's not for children. And
Mm.
when I'm having class with some students and I see their eyes, they kind of lose the innocence of being a kid because they suffer so much pressure. And no matter what kind of question I ask them, there is no answer, always
Mm.
silent. So sometimes my class might be a little bit embarrassing. It's like
Mm.
I talk to myself, and
Yeah. Yeah.
occasionally I can get some response. So I'm trying to turn my class not only just the English study, but sometimes I hope students can
Mm.
talk to me something they
Yeah.
don't dare to say to share in their
Mm.
daily life. But it's very difficult.
It is difficult. I mean, because if you're working with students who are used to being told off for making a mistake, they're in a state of fear, aren't they? And they're inhibited. They're stopped from saying what they think. But we do know that the best learning happens. People learn the most when they are free to say what they think, free to make mistakes, because that is how we learn as human beings. We learn through making mistakes and then reflecting, well, why, how did we make a mistake there? Talking through with someone who perhaps does know the answer to get help. Um,
Mm,
you know, it's but if you have a atmosphere at home or in school where people are really frightened to make mistakes, then they don't learn very much. So
mm,
I would say, I always say to my teachers who we educate at Goldsmiths, create a no blame, no fear atmosphere. That's not the same as having boundaries. You want, people need to be kind and polite to each other, but they also need to feel safe so they can say if they don't understand something. But I've been in many classes and I still actually am, even at my very advanced age and situation, I go into them and I'm around people and I think I'm not going to say I don't really know what's going on here. um and so it's really easy to generate that atmosphere. And I think, again, parents need to be aware that the best teachers create an atmosphere where people feel free to say, hang on a
mm,
minute,
mm,
I don't know what's going on here, I really don't get this.
mm,
um and that's really important.
mm.
I don't know what you think about that.
Talking about the best teacher, I would like to address Thea's, your son's Thea's, idea about the changing school. And
Yeah.
we always value the school about how many teachers they've got certificates and
Yeah.
how many activity clubs they provide. But actually, the most important factor is the teacher. If the
Yeah.
teacher in that class can treat your children as an individual and really care about the child. If your child feels really happy and
Yeah.
comfortable in that class, and I think this is um, one element parents ignore when they decide to um, transfer children to another school. And I would also like to ask you about how can parents build up more confidence when they
Mhm.
decide to do this changing school.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, in the game, we could direct people to my previous podcast, but and stuff I've written. I moved my son out of a private school, which has a very high reputation, still does, and because he wasn't learning anything. I mean, he was scared to make mistakes, and he was not enjoying the reading, he was not enjoying the learning, and everything was very competitive. You know, results for music exams were published on the board, and he was really not enjoying the sports either. It was a very competitive approach to sports. And then we moved him to the local state primary, and the teachers were lovely there and really caring. And he just suddenly flourished. Well, actually, it took him a while, but he did much better in the end in his exams. He came top of the whole country in English and maths when he was 11, which is the sort of SATs that we do in the UK. And that was not, he'd had no homework. They didn't set any homework at that school. And again, that's another thing, that actually homework for young children, not older children, can be a real problem, because the parents are shouting at their children for not doing the homework, and the children not doing it very well, and it just puts them off the learning. So he moved from a school where we've got loads of homework, very competitive, he didn't enjoy the learning, to a place where the teachers really cared about the children and allowed them to make mistakes. And he was, he got his energy back, he got his interest in learning back. And he still says it was the happiest days of his life in that school. But yeah, very sweet. Yeah, but I think that's really important for parents to learn. I learned it, that really changed my views on
Mm,
how I was as a teacher too. I think I became sort of less strict, less
mm,
obsessed by exams, and more sort of interested in trying to develop the whole child. I
mm.
don't know what you think about that. Any thoughts?
Talking about schoolwork, after class homework, it's very funny because now it's just the summer holiday in China.
Yeah.
The parents told me that summer holiday is much busier than the
Well,
semester, the term, because her daughter, another one, this is her daughter goes to different extracurricular classes, and
yeah.
because she studies in a very top state school, and
Yeah.
the teachers in that school require the parents to, no matter what way you do, but you have to make sure your child, for example, next semester is year 2, they have to catch up with year 3
Right.
material, so which means
Yeah.
you have to study ahead.
Yeah. Crazy.
Very, very crazy. So very busy, very fully scheduled,
Mm.
that student. So that's why she always changes the time with me. And I always feel, every class I ask the girl, are you tired? Are you okay? And she said, oh, okay, math is a little bit difficult. Of course, you are year 1,
Mm.
but now you are learning year 2, year 3. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's kind of like the very typical situation choose about the schools in China, especially the top
Mm.
ones, top state ones,
Yeah.
because they
And
want to study ahead and leaving the time for their weakness
yeah.
in the future in order to get very good results in the exam.
Yeah. And I would say, yeah, I know we, again, it's quite similar in the UK, very
Oh,
similar, in certain schools, not all schools.
mm,
And I can tell you a story of a parent who, really micromanaged their child, so that every minute was full of activity of them learning maths and doing sports and doing music. And now, this child is in his sort of late 20s. And I have to say, he went to university and he couldn't cope, because everything had been so structured for him. He, at university in the UK, and in the US, and in fact, I know another person, a very similar thing happened in the US, is less structured. You have to organize yourself, and they fell to bits, because I think, like, we we definitely we need to carry on talking, because I've got to wrap up this podcast now. But look, we can maybe have a little report back later. I think a key thing possibly to sort of end on is that you need to give your child rest. You need to give them a chance to be bored and do
mm,
nothing. you know, because that is very important cognitive processing time where they absorb what they've learned and they reflect and they learn about what they're interested in. And that's important for us too, isn't it, that we all need rest. And there's a lot of research done recently showing that, you know, often the really kind of uh, you know, really real geniuses of the world have had a lot of rest, you know, like Einstein and people who discovered the theory of relativity. Actually, the basic idea came to him when he was having a walk and a rest, you know, from the
Mm.
work. So I think that it's really important for parents to realize that. Um, yeah. What's your thoughts on that? Maybe just to wrap up on sort of the importance of rest and having a break.
I, I think, as you said, the parents micromanage the children's time. I think it has turned the situation very extreme, and it's
Yeah.
very important to have a rest, especially for the parents as well, because they suffer from the pressure and the
Mm,
anxiety a lot, and they need to know how to relax themselves as well,
mm,
because if they are in very intense status all the time and the
mm,
children see them, they would not be very relaxed
mm.
as well. So it's quite
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe we'll finish off here because what would be lovely to do is, you know, we'll publish this podcast and
Sure.
I'll do a little blog to go with it. And then, you know, maybe we can check in with you in a few months' time, say, to see, you know, if any Chinese parents have seen it or you have a chance to translate it, or we can do a translation and see what they think,
No
see whether
problem.
they agree. That would be good, wouldn't it? Be really
Yes.
interesting to see, you know, whether if you're able to show it to some of them, if they
Oh,
think it's, and I can sort of show it to you know UK parents as well, and see, you know, what their views are, and we can see if we can answer some of their queries
oh,
then.
no problem. I think
Yeah.
I'm sure it will be very helpful.
Oh, great.